Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Tina Anderson, how are you doing today?
I am doing awesome, Dr. Marisa. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. We haven't talked about gut health in a little while, and I know my community is always trying to figure out what is going on with their gut. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of that. Right now, we're going to be actually focusing on dismantling the myths about leaky gut, gut health, and probiotics. Really some things to actually help our gut and what is serving us and what isn't. But before we get into all of that, I want to just have you start and share your story about kind of what was that defining moment for you when you knew you wanted to help people, like talking about millions of people with their gut health.
You know, it's kind of an interesting story. My husband and I were in the pharmaceutical industry for many years, and we were so excited. We thought, this is so great. It's so fun to deliver life-saving medications to people. We thought we were doing something so wonderful. And of course, there is a place for pharmaceuticals and all of that, but we were like this, we had a situation that happened in the office one day where we won this bid for this huge hospital system for a product, for a pharmaceutical product. And we were like, this is awesome. We won this great bid. And the pharmaceutical rep came into our office and said, you know what, this is great, but my job now is to go to every single doctor in this hospital system and lower the number that they prescribe this medication for, like try to talk the doctors into basically over prescribing it, is what he was trying to tell them. He was telling us he was going to do. And we were like, no, that's so wrong. And while a part of us was shocked, another part of us was like, well, you know what, we saw this with our relatives. We saw this with people in our, circle of friends and our relatives. One of our aunts, for example, had some stomach issues. So she went on a pharmaceutical, and then that caused joint issues. And then then she was on another pharmaceutical, and then that caused skin issues. And before you know it, she was like on 12 different medications and still not getting better. And so we really saw that there was this, overprescribing, abuses of pharmaceuticals in the industry. And so we're very deep thinkers. We read a lot of Norman Vincent Peale. Wayne Dyer is one of our biggest, we're his biggest fan. Bless his soul, he passed away. But we were like, we're not doing our life's work. And we just really need to do something that is more in line with how we live our lives with our 3 kids and what we do. And we've always been more natural minded. And we started learning more and more about the gut. This is around the time the Human Microbiome Project was launched by the National Institutes of Health. And we were like, this is like, gut health is where it's at. Gut health is the secret key to our health. And so from there, we launched, we were able to get the exclusive rights to these really, really incredible strains out of London University. We have the exclusive rights in all of North America, and we brought Just Thrive to market. And it's been the most gratifying career journey I've ever been on, bar none.
I love that. And I just want to take a moment and just celebrate you for just that deep knowing, like finding your truth, connecting with your husband and saying to yourselves, this is probably not our work in the world, it's selling the pharmaceutical companies, realizing what it's like. I know a lot of reps, or I've known reps where that's exactly the deal. They're always trying to upsell the surgeon or the doctor into more of what they're selling, whether it's good for the patient or not. And I know it's cringeworthy to hear that, as a patient, as a person in the world, but unfortunately that's business, and that's the hospital and medical business. And so I just want to applaud you for saying a whole lot of hell no to that and finding your true purpose. And I love that we're digging into the gut. I know a lot of people hear that the gut is ground zero for our health. And, in particularly ground zero for where the immune system is handling business, inflammation is arising. So talk to me a little bit about gut health specifically and how it is such a major contributor to our overall health.
Yeah. I love that you said that it was ground zero, because I say that all the time, every day, over and over and over again. But the gut is really responsible for virtually every single aspect of our overall health. In fact, it's hard to find any disease that's not related to an imbalance of your gut. So of course, people think of gut health when they have gastrointestinal issues, or they have, gas, bloating, diarrhea. And of course, those are times that they let you know, your body's letting you know you've got some gut imbalance. But people aren't thinking of skin rashes having anything to do with your gut, and yet they have everything to do with your gut. They're not thinking of mental health issues, anxiety, depression. And there's a huge connection between your gut brain. Vagus nerve is the biggest, nerve in our body that connects our gut and our brain. So there's a huge connection there. People aren't thinking of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune issues. I mean, most people know that autoimmune issues have to do with the gut, but they're not thinking about heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. All of those types of conditions out there are all directly related to an imbalance in your gut. So you are absolutely right to say ground zero. And especially when you talk about inflammation, because if your gut is inflamed in any way, you could be taking all the supplements, you could be eating all the nutritious food, but if those nutrient-rich foods are not being absorbed because your gut is inflamed, there's no point in eating them, because there's no absorption going on. So it's really, our gut is really critical to every aspect of our overall health.
I 100% agree. Every time I'm working with a patient or I'm connecting with someone in my community, it's always tied to the gut one way or the other, especially,
Yes.
and as a woman's hormone expert, particularly dealing with autoimmune conditions, hormonal imbalances, high levels of stress, insulin resistance, and then even looking into like things like progesterone and estrogen, we know it's all interconnected. And so often we treat them, in the medical system, we treat them as separate entities. And so if my community goes to the doctor, it's going to, they're going to get a drug for this, they're going to get a medication for this, they're going to, it's not going to be seen as interconnected. So if they're struggling with insulin resistance or an autoimmune condition, the gut isn't going to be the thing that's going to be looked at there. And so I'm so glad that you're helping us to connect the dots today. One of the things that I want to focus on today is specifically talking about some of the biggest offenders for gut health. Because I know people, I feel like sometimes we know what it feels like to have the common gut issues. You had mentioned them, like diarrhea, constipation, gas, and bloating, and then potentially connecting the dots to things like brain fog and anxiety and either rashes or whatever could be going on, migraines. So can you speak to me about what are some of the things that are actually causing the disruption in our gut, whether it is our stomach or our microbiome, and kind of the whole entire tube connecting all the way from our mouth down?
Yes, I'd love to talk about that. So basically, it's just so good to remind ourselves that we are more microbes, we are more bacteria than we are human cells. And that's really hard for people to get their head around. I mean, we literally are more bacteria than we are human cells. And so, yet we live in this antimicrobial world. We live in this, kills off 99.
Especially right now.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I was like all of the cleaning products that say kills 99.99% of bacteria. It's like those households that use those types of cleaning products have a higher incidence of kids with allergies because they're killing their bacteria. The hand sanitizer. I mean, I'll admit when this whole thing first happened, I was like, okay, maybe I'll finally buy hand sanitizer because I didn't know what was going on. And then now I'm done with it. I'm like, oh no, soap and water is fine. But this hand sanitizer is one of the worst things we could be doing as far as taking care of our microbes and our bacteria in our gut. So we have to really be aware of, just the things that are offenders like you had mentioned. So one of the biggest offenders are antibiotics. So antibiotics that we take, even a single course of antibiotic, a single dose of Augmentin was shown in a study to wreak havoc in the gut for up to a year period of time. I mean, it's like we see crazy results with people taking. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take an antibiotic if it's saving your life, but I'm just saying it's interesting to understand the effects of an antibiotic has on your gut. But there's also antibiotics in our food supply that we don't think about. So in our food, we're eating food all the time, and there's antibiotics sprayed on our food and put in our food. And glyphosates, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, is very detrimental to our gut health.
And real quick, can you speak into me, because I know a lot of people hear about Roundup or hear about herbicides and pesticides being sprayed onto our food, but it is more proliferative than we could imagine, right? It's in the feed of the animals that we're potentially eating. It's pretty much in every processed food product that one could even imagine. Just kind of explain to me a little bit about the insidious nature of something like a Roundup and how, today you have to really actively work to not be consuming those types of poisons.
Yes. And unfortunately, even when you're actively working to not consume those poisons, there's even the, organic food is going to have some. I mean, our rainwater is contaminated with glyphosate. It's everywhere. It doesn't mean it will still have less. So I would always suggest that you try to eat clean and organic. But here's the scary thing about glyphosate, which again is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is everywhere in all of our, I mean, so much of our food supply. So with antibiotics, antibiotics kill the bad bacteria and the good bacteria, which,
Mhm.
you know, we want them to kill the bad bacteria.
Yeah, it's an obliterator. It doesn't
Yes,
discriminate.
right, exactly. Here's what's scary about glyphosate. Glyphosate only targets the good bacteria. It doesn't even get rid of the bad bacteria in our body. I'm not talking about what it does to the crops. I'm talking about what it does to our body. So when we are consuming food that has glyphosate in it, that glyphosate is going into our body and only targeting the good bacteria. So it's worse than an antibiotic because it's not even getting rid of the bad bacteria. So we really have to be, I can't stress up eating clean enough. And again, even our organic food has some, you know, glyphosate in it because we just can't get away from it. But it's hard to believe that we have allowed this substance to be sprayed on all of our food and consumed by our population. And then we wonder why, you know, our kids have allergies and have all of these autoimmune issues. And it's really sad.
Hmm. I absolutely agree with that. Right now, there's, outside of doing your best to avoid, there's not a lot we can do in terms of, we don't have mandates right now for eliminating it, at least not here in the US, which is
Yeah,
so unfortunate.
it
And
is.
then, thinking of big offenders and talking about specifically how these big offenders are affecting our gut, one of the things we hear so much about, like kind of one of the tag words out there is going to be leaky gut. And I believe, if I've read my research correctly, that about 80% of the adult population today has some spectrum of leaky gut. I get that we can have, maybe some people it isn't so bad. Some people it's very, very bad. But most of us have no idea that we're dealing with it. Maybe because we're not attributing our symptoms to what could be going on in our gut lining.
Yes. So leaky gut is so important to talk about. I'm so glad you brought it up because it's basically, leaky gut is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically the leakiness of the gut. So everything, your intestinal tract is like a tube, your mouth, and then it goes out,
All
your
the other
anus.
side.
And right, exactly. And so, it's just this tube with two open ends. Well, nothing should be seeping out because the minute it seeps out, it goes into your bloodstream. And we don't want any of those. We don't want, kale is super healthy for us, or, organic spinach is super healthy for us, but it's not healthy for us when it's in our bloodstream. So we don't want food particles seeping into our bloodstream. And that's exactly what happens is in our gut, the lining starts to open up. These tight junctions within our gut lining start to open up, and then food particles seep in, and even worse, LPS toxins seep in. So LPS stands for lipopolysaccharide. It's a toxin that is, when it's found in our gut, is really not problematic. It's only when it seeps into our bloodstream where it really causes, problems and issues and wreaks havoc. Our immune system starts to have this inflammatory response. So, and you are absolutely right. About 80% of the adult population has a leaky gut and they don't even know it. In fact, we are the first probiotic company. And in fact, I think we're the first pharmaceutical company or any company out there that has a double-blind human clinical trial on leaky gut or metabolic endotoxemia. And basically what it showed is that the University of North Texas did the study, and they took 100 college students and tested them for leaky gut. And they tested them by giving them a challenge meal, so a fast food breakfast. And they tested to see how many of them had LPS toxins leak into their bloodstream. They found 55% of those students had LPS leaking into their bloodstream. These are healthy college students. These are young, vibrant kids that are super healthy, no pharmaceuticals, no medications, no underlying diseases that they knew of. And sure enough, they had this leakiness of the gut. And these, like I said, these are young kids. So yes, they estimate that as you get a little bit older, the percentage of people with leaky gut gets higher. And the thing is, it's like a faucet that has a drip, it's this constant drip, and you have this leaking.
Well, you're constantly eating.
Right. You're
Right. So
constantly,
you're always bringing it. And we think
yes.
about kids, even college kids, which I know is the kind of the demographic we do a lot of these types of tests on. But we think about, like, I remember growing up, I grew up on Pop-Tarts. I grew up on Corn Flakes. I
Yeah.
grew up on Kool-Aid. I could continue to name all the offenders that I grew up on. And I don't know how much in the 80s the glyphosate was playing a big, big role. But I do know that the generation who are college students today, that glyphosate has been in the environment for quite some time, at least in their childhood. So it's heartbreaking, but we think about parents were just serving their kids normal everyday, lunches and dinners, not really thinking about it, that's a couple decades
Yep.
of exposure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what's so scary
That's
about it
what's
is
really
that,
scary about it.
yeah,
Yes.
this constant drip. And so people don't even realize that they have a leaky gut and they don't even realize it. And so they're eating and they're eating. They're like, oh, I don't have any, gut issues. I don't have any problems. And then all of a sudden one day they're like, oh my gosh, I have an autoimmune disease. Oh my gosh, I have heart disease or whatever, I have some type of issue, Alzheimer's even, people are being diagnosed with Alzheimer's at such a younger age now because the number one driver of Alzheimer's is LPS toxins in the bloodstream. I mean, the number one driver of most diseases is LPS toxins that are seeping into the bloodstream. And now our studies show that after 30 days, we sent these kids home. Half of the subjects got the spore-based probiotics. The other half got a placebo. They came back after 30 days, no dietary or lifestyle modifications, nothing. Gave them another challenge meal, tested them. The treated group that took the spores saw a 42% reduction in LPS toxins in the bloodstream. This was just after 30 days and no dietary or lifestyle modifications at all. And we know what college students are doing to their bodies. And then here's the scary part. So that was great that the treated group saw a 42% reduction. But the non-treated group, the placebo group, actually saw a 32% increase in LPS toxins from the first time. So what that's telling the researchers is that when you have a leaky gut, you're just creating more of this, these LPS toxins seeping into the bloodstream. It's like I said, the leaky faucet, it's this constant drip that's going into our bloodstream that's wreaking havoc on our whole body and our immune system.
Now, can you speak? So clearly, if this is happening, 80% of our population has got some spectrum of leaky gut. And clearly, every time they're eating, they're getting exposed to these LPS toxins. When you're taking a really incredible strain of a probiotic, and we're going to get into the probiotics in just a moment, is it that the bacteria are able to consume it? Are they able to help repair the leaky gut? Or is it a combination of a couple things that are going on when we get the right bacteria into the gut?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things is that these strains actually go in and recondition the gut. So we're not going in and throwing bacteria in our gut and like putting more good bacteria. We're not reseeding it. What we're doing is we're reconditioning our own bacteria that's already in the gut. And so what it's doing, like if you envision a garden that's been stepped on and trampled on, these spores go into the garden and they attach to the soil. And then they have the ability to get rid of the weeds. And then they have the ability to bring those plants that have been stepped on and trampled on back to life. So same thing with the gut. So they're reconditioning the gut. They're making the gut much more balanced and more resilient and more diverse, all these things, which in turn, it helps prevent from creating this leakiness of the gut in the first place. When you have a balanced gut, you're not going to see so much degradation of the gut lining. But the other thing these strains also do is we knew that they created these proteins that help seal up the tight junctions. So they're also helping seal up the tight junctions, which is helping sealing up the gut lining. So it's a combination of rebalancing the gut and making the gut very lush and diverse and robust. And then it's also helping create tighter junctions, have the tight junctions not spread apart and get closer together and help seal up that gut lining.
Mm. Thank you. And I know we're going to go into probiotics right now. Kind of like how we know we've got gut issues. We know we're supposed to take probiotics to help support the garden of our gut, right? Our microflora. So talk to me a little bit about, I know you just mentioned some pretty important benefits when you have the right strains in the system, but talk to me about what is the main purpose of a probiotic? Because I know, again, a lot of my audience, they're like, okay, I'm supposed to take these. I kind of get why I'm taking these, but I'd love for you to kind of spend some time and break it down for us.
Well, like you had said, it is ground zero for health. The main purpose is to rebalance the gut. So we want to make sure that there's more beneficial bacteria than there are pathogenic bacteria. We're going to have, we want to balance. We don't feel like we should go in and get rid of all the pathogenic bacteria. It's really a balance of the two. And so the biggest purpose is to just keep that in balance, because it's literally dictating every aspect of our overall health. Like, it's hard to find any disease that's not associated with an imbalance of your gut microbiome. So I definitely think that it's really just about taking care of your gut, so that we talked about inflammation. If you have an inflamed gut, you're not absorbing nutrients. So you could be doing all these other therapies, and we know that most of our hormones are produced in our gut. I mean, serotonin, 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. Dopamine is produced in our gut. The gut plays a huge critical role in estrogen balance and all of our other hormones that are going on. So there's really no aspect of our health that is not associated with gut health. I'm a huge fan of like the importance of hormones. I feel like if you have your gut microbiome and you have your hormones under control, you are golden. But they go hand in hand. A lot of times people will be taking care of their hormone imbalances and doing different things, but they haven't addressed the gut issue. And so that's kind of the last missing piece sometimes.
I agree. I always say it's a root cause. Gut issues are a root cause for hormone imbalance. Your hormones are chemical messengers, and they're responding to what is going on in the environment. And so if the gut is off, we're going to have some major problems. And I appreciate kind of breaking down, the benefit of what probiotics are designed to do, which is really recultivate or help support the balance of the gut microbiome, not necessarily get rid of the not so positive bacteria or yeast or whatever else is going on in there, but to help make sure that we've got robust, healthy bacteria. When it comes to probiotics, I know that there are some pretty big myths about them in the world. Can you speak to some of the biggest myths that you have heard, maybe kind of make you giggle, and then talk to me a little bit about how probiotics really show up in the body or in the gut?
Yeah. So I think I'll start with one of my favorite myths is that in order to be a good probiotic, it needs to be refrigerated. So even doctors will say that, they'll say, in order to make sure you get one in the refrigerated section. And you know what, the origination of that makes sense. It's like, we know that in order to be even considered a probiotic, it needs to be a live microorganism. So the idea is they need to be refrigerated in order to stay alive. But the question then goes, you go to like, well, if it needs to be refrigerated to stay alive, then how, because it can't withstand the room temperature of a store shelf, how in the world would it survive your body temperature, which is 98.6?
Which is much higher.
Much higher. Yes, exactly. And the answer is that they will not survive your body temperature. And then let's say they did, by some miracle, they were able to survive your body temperature. What happens when they get to the gastric system? So the stomach, it's very acidic. It's meant to be the gastric barrier. And the strains would definitely, die there. So that is really a myth that a probiotic needs to be refrigerated in order to be a good, high quality probiotic. They may be better than the ones that are on the shelf that were dead and will always be dead and are never going to be alive. But the spores, the difference between the spores is that they are actually dormant on the store shelf. They're not live bacteria. They don't become alive until they hit the intestines, and that's when they take their shell off. And it's not because we've done anything to engineer them. This is just these strains, these bacillus strains are exactly the way nature intended us to get them. They're dormant in the soil. Our ancestors used to consume them with food, and then you would swallow them, and then they get to the intestines and they become alive. So one of my favorite myths, like I said, is that when, it doesn't need to be refrigerated to stay alive. Because remember, it doesn't need to be alive in the refrigerator. It needs to be alive in your intestines. That is the key. Just the very definition of a probiotic is that it needs to be alive in the intestines to be a probiotic and confer a benefit onto the host, which is the body.
So is it always a good idea for it to be in spore form when we're taking it? Because you're right, in the spore, it's not active yet. It's still dormant. We think about that. Like we even think about like seedlings for our fruit or our vegetables, same kind of situation, right? You plant them and then they come alive. So should we always be focusing on buying a probiotic that is spore-based versus they're just straight strains?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel so strongly about this because 99% of the probiotics in the market are dying before they ever get to the intestines. In fact, one of the first studies that we did as a company was we had a lab source products from major health food stores out there, and they found that this is one of the products, was a 50 billion count CFU product that died off 99.99% by the time it got to the intestines. And that's with all of the lactobacillus and bifidobacter based probiotics. They're dying. Now, it doesn't mean dead bacteria don't do anything. They may do something. They may give some symptomatic relief. People will say, well, I've tried a probiotic and it did help me. And you may get some symptomatic relief. But what it's not doing is it's not making a change in the microbiome. It's giving you some symptomatic relief, maybe like putting a Band-Aid on it, but it's actually not changing the makeup of that garden. It's not getting rid of the weeds. It's not helping those good bacteria, just is giving you some symptomatic relief. So yeah, and that's another point. My other myth is just that one of the other big myths is about, I need 50 billion CFUs is better than 20 billion CFUs. And, or 100 billion CFUs is better than 50 billion CFUs. And so people will, look at a product and be like, well, this one has 100 billion and it's only $19.99. I should get this because this one has 20 billion and it's $24.99. And so there is no science. We have not found one study that shows more is better. The thing that we have to focus on is the quality of the strains and what they're doing to the microbiome. And so one of the first studies we did after the survivability study was something called a gut model study. It's the only way to really simulate a human microbiome. And there's 2 universities in the whole world that do this study. It's called a SHINE model study. And it basically showed that after 2.5 weeks, that these strains actually caused a 30% favorable shift. So that garden was 30% better after 2.5 weeks. And our product only has 3 billion CFUs, and so there's really no science behind having more is better. The reason companies put more in is because they know that they're not surviving. They know the majority of them are not surviving. So they're hoping some may get through, at some point, but it's really become much more of like a marketing tool than anything.
Okay. That's good to know. So any other myths we should know? Because clearly there are lots and lots of probiotics on the shelves. So 1, the numbers don't matter. 2, we shouldn't buy them refrigerated. Most of them on the shelf are probably dead already. We should be focusing on spore-based probiotics. Anything else that I'm missing specifically?
Yeah, I'd probably say I probably have so many other myths, but I'll stick with one more. The other one is just that, you need to switch up your probiotics. A lot of times people will say, oh, you need, I had talked about having a diverse microbiome equates to health. I mean, if you have a diverse and lush microbiome, that literally equates to health. And every health expert out there would agree with that. So they got this idea that we should switch up our probiotics. Like, oh, I'm going to take this one because it has 15 different strains and this one that has 16 different strains. And then in a couple months, I'm going to take this one that has 10 different strains. And so I'm going to have diversity in my microbiome. First of all, that would never work because most of them are not surviving. But second of all, here's what the scary part is. University of California, Davis did a study. They took 16 probiotic products off of California store shelves and found that only one of them met label claims. So what these companies are doing is they're taking like 15 different strains and putting them in a vat and growing them all together. And then one strain is taking over another strain. So that strain that was listed on the label is no longer in the product. Or worse, 2 strains come together and create a whole new strain that's not even listed on the product, on the label. So it was really, really scary. So the idea of, throwing a whole bunch of probiotics in one strain and one pot and mixing them all together is dangerous, for one. And it really does not adequately show what is on the label. So out of 16 products, only one of them met label claims. So we don't do that. We grow our 4 strains in different vats and we have our product DNA verified. The reason is that DNA verification will assure that what we say on the label is actually in the product. So you don't create diversity by switching up your probiotic every couple months. That does not, how you create diversity is taking your own bacteria that already belongs to you and helping it come back to life, if you will, and get rid of more of don't have an overgrowth of the bad bacteria or the yeast. So just, in order to have diversity, you want to work with your own microbiome.
That's good to know, because I think a lot of people think that they need to massively replenish. I think a lot of people think that they just probably have obliterated a lot of their bacteria inside of their gut and that they need to put more in. I mean, that's always been the thing. It's more is better.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And that is the biggest problem, is that's what people think, is that you need to put more in. And that's really the uphill battle we have been, climbing up, is just telling this whole new story that's all based on research and science. And it's definitely getting out there because everybody is now, talking about spore-based probiotics and how important they are.
Hmm, I love that. The last thing I wanted to just touch upon before we finish up is talking about, as we replenish the gut microbiome, the impact that it has on the immune system, or the impact that the gut has on the immune system as well. I know we're definitely very concerned, definitely much more alert about the immune system than ever before right now. But, a big part of this conversation is really about our gut health and how we can ensure that our gut health and our immune system health are working together and are healthy and thriving. Can you connect the dots for us there?
Absolutely. And you are totally right about that. I mean, there is no better time than now to be building our resilience, for this. I mean, there's no treatment out there for COVID-19. There's nothing that's been shown to treat or prevent it yet, for sure. I mean, we're not sure yet. They're still looking. But what we do know is that we have to count on our own immune system to protect us from this, because there's no treatment out there. And our immune system really has to be functioning optimally. I can't stress that enough, so all the things that we do to be healthy are really important, and the gut plays a really important role in the immune system. About 80% of our immune tissue is in the gut. That's huge. 80% of our immune system is in the gut. So super important. And, when we start to follow the recent studies on how the immune system battles this particular virus, or any virus really, is you start to realize that it's the proliferation of cells that are called the T cells and the B cells that are required to detect and start to fight the virus. And most of that proliferation occurs in the tissues that are found in the gut, in the small intestine. So that is why it's so critical to be taking care of our gut right now. The key is really to have a healthier microbiome, because it's our microbiome that stimulates those tissues to improve the proliferation of those immune cells. So just keep in mind that our own immune system is really the only defense against this virus right now. And 80% of our immune system is in the gut. And so if you have a dysfunctional gut, your immune system can be suppressed or confused. Or on the flip side, if you have a healthy and functioning microbiome, your immune system should be working more optimally. So it's really, really, I can't stress that enough. I mean, we've been talking about, immune systems even before this whole pandemic started, and how important, the role that the gut plays in the immune system.
I absolutely agree. And I think that if the immune system is having to continuously fight fights in the gut, and no surprise that the immune system is like 80% of the immune system is in the gut, there is no more intimate connection to the environment, into our body, than through the gut, the whole tube, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
no wonder that the immune system is like on the, watch and wait alert, just in
Yes.
case something creeps in. And I know we just don't think of it that way, but that's where we connect in with the environment, with the external environment and all the things that are out there in the world. So I'm so glad that you brought that to our attention, and we're just having that conversation, because I know we don't think about whether it's a virus or some type of pathogen or whatever's going on, that hits our system, that it could have a greater impact on our body if our gut health and our immune system health aren't working together in conjunction. That the immune system isn't feeling like it's on high alert there, so it's distracted and not addressing some of the bigger problems that are going on.
Yep, absolutely. I can't stress. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Well, I just want to say, Tina, thank you so much for coming on. I'd love for you to share a little bit about Just Thrive, your incredible spore-based probiotic.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So basically, Just Thrive is a 100% spore-based probiotic. We license these strains from London University, from Dr. Simon Cutting, world-renowned probiotic expert. And the strains are, we have 3 billion CFUs. We have studies on them. We have 12 human clinical trials on this product, which is unheard of in the supplement industry. And we are just having such incredible success with, customers and how their people are feeling on it. You have people saying, I have more energy. People, like I said, they come to a probiotic because maybe they have gastrointestinal issues, but yet they find out that, oh my God, now I have more energy, or I have less sugar cravings now or I have, like all of a sudden, because you're getting rid of the yeast in the gut. And so there's so many different aspects of health that that are being impacted. We always say, in the pharmaceutical world, it would be like side effects include all these horrible things. And ours are like side effects may include more energy, better mood, and,
I like to call those side benefits.
Yes. So I love that. Yes. Side benefits. Exactly. It's really such an easy product to take. It's 1 capsule a day with food. We suggest taking it with food because we did a study showing that it works better in the presence of food. You can open the capsules and mix it with food if you'd like to, because for kids who don't like to swallow or can't swallow, or even adults that don't like to, but it won't, do anything with the integrity of the product at all. You could actually even open these and bake with them. We tested them up to 455 degrees and they survive completely. So there's really nobody that I could think of that shouldn't be taking this product. I feel like if you wake up breathing with a gut, you should be, taking the probiotic. Great for pregnant moms, of course, because a pregnant mother actually passes on her microbiome to her child. If there's ever a time you want to take care of your microbiome, it's when you're pregnant, because what your microbiome looks like is pretty much what your child's microbiome is going to look like. So really important to be taking a high quality spore-based probiotic during pregnancy. I'm very passionate about kids taking it because of like I said, kids have, so many allergies, more than I know I ever did as a kid. Any of my friends did. You didn't see, allergies when I was a kid, and now you see, you have whole peanut-free tables and things like that. So really important for kids to be taking care of their gut, because we're living in this antimicrobial world. So I think that's really the key.
Yeah, and we'll actually have a coupon code as well in the show notes. It'll be Marisa15, but it's super easy to find, with 15% off. And I just want to say thank you so much, Tina, for coming on and just giving just real talk information about the gut, connecting the dots for us, and really offering a solution that can help to restore our own bacteria so that we are functioning properly, our bodies are healing properly. I just want to say thank you so much for that.
Yes. And thank you so much for the great work you're doing. I just think it's so important to let people know the importance of hormones and all the natural health stuff that you're doing. I just can't thank you enough. I'm so grateful for platforms like yours out there.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll see you soon, Tina.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.